Thanks for returning. You know, when I first moved to Wimberley, Texas, I applied for a job at Wood Creek Resort as assistant sales and catering manager, and I worked there for about a year. And my boss had this little boy, and he was as wide as he was tall, a fatter little boy I had never seen. And I'm going to call him Brian. So I knew Brian from the time he was about 5 years old until the present time, when I was living in my little cottage on River Road. Well, as you know, I moved into this little cottage and it wasn't finished yet. So I was already in my cottage for about a year and decided that I had enough money to do the trim work and to tape and float and do all the trim work around the windows and doors and stuff. So I wanted to finish my little cottage. So I was thinking I really wanted somebody special to do this work. Well, this is many, 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 many years later since I had moved to Wimberley, and I decided that I would call Brian because I knew that Brian had his own construction company, and he was just so precious to me. And Brian was now a young man. He had been married and even had a little boy of his own. Although I hadn't seen him for a long time, I decided I wanted Brian to finish my little cottage. That would make it all the more special to have somebody special to me finish my cottage. So I gave him a call and he said, sure, I'll come over and I'll give you a bid. So he came over and I showed him what I wanted him to do, and we agreed on price. And he was going to start on the following weekend. He told me he could only do this on the weekends, that he had to, you know, do his regular jobs during the week, but that he would be happy to do it on the weekends and after work. So he did. Well, I got a phone call on a Friday before he was supposed to start on Saturday, and he said, I can come tomorrow and I can start the work, but it's my weekend for my little boy, Christopher. So if you don't mind babysitting Christopher, I can work and you can play with him and babysit. Is that okay? And I said, oh, it'd be great. I haven't been around a little 3-year-old tyke for a long time, so sure, bring him over and we'll have great fun. So he brought Christopher over. Now, this is the first time I've ever met Christopher, and he is a precious little boy. He looks just like Brian, and I can see so much of Brian in his little boy. So we have great fun. Well, it had been a long time since I had been in the company of a 3-year-old, and I exhausted every game, 3-year-old game I knew. I mean, we played I Spy, and we played Mother May I, and we played all kinds of card games, Go Fish, Old Maids, and all those card games and stuff. We ran down to the store to get some ice cream or something. All the while, Christopher's dad is working outside and I'm entertaining Christopher. We got back home and I thought up a couple other games. We colored a little bit, or I didn't even have any crayons. I think I got some pens out and we drew things on some paper. And finally, as I exhausted all the games that I knew, something came out of my mouth that I didn't plan on saying. And I can only promise you that I did not have any intention of saying what I said to this child. But what came out of my mouth, the question that came out of my mouth, it horrified me because of the nature of this question. Out of nowhere, I say to this child, so Christopher, tell me about before you were born. Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that to this child. I mean, I know he's going to tell on me. I know he's going to say something to his dad about Kim asking him this weird question about before he was born. Tell me about before you were born. I'm thinking to myself, where did that come from? I didn't intend on saying that to this child. Well, I'm worrying about, telling his dad because, Brian is this, he's kind of this, he drives a big truck with big tires, and I just don't think he's going to resonate with this. And it worried me because I knew I was going to have to confess to Christopher's dad. And all this stuff is going through my head, and I'm really worried. But in those moments of my worry and my panic, Christopher says to me, he answers me, he says, "Oh, I was with God in the woods with the wolves." And I said, "You were?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, and he held his little hand out. He said, "God has gold magic in his hands. I have green magic in mine. Want to feel?" And he put his little hands on my bad knee. I had had surgery on this knee. And I could feel how warm his little hands were and how real prickly, like with energy they were. And he said, "Feel it? Can you feel it?" And then he talked and talked and talked. He said, "And I told my daddy if he ever falls off the roof that I can heal him." Well, I almost fell out of my chair, but I still knew that I was going to have to confess what I had, discovered in Christopher. And I guess I was arrogant enough to think that I had caused him to tell me what he did, Well, after work, and after Brian was done with the work, I called him aside, and I sent Christopher out on the carport to examine his father's work or some lame excuse so I could visit with Brian alone. And I said, "Brian, I said something to Christopher today that I have to tell you beforehand. I had no intention of saying this to him, but it concerns me because I want you to know what I said, and I don't want you to be upset, and I'll understand if you're upset, and I'll understand if you can't go with this. I'll even understand if you can't do any more work for me again." And he said, "My God, Kim, what did you say to him?" And I said, please know that I didn't mean to say this to him." He said, "What did you say?" And he's kind of worried. And I said, "So Christopher, tell me about before you were born." Well, Brian just kind of threw back his head and he started laughing. And I said, "You think that's funny?" And I'm thinking, well, this is good. He thinks it's funny. Maybe he'll continue to do my work for me. He said, "Did he tell you about being with God in the woods with the wolves?" And I said, "He's told you this?" He said, "Oh yeah, he talks about it all the time." He said, did he show you his green magic in his hands? Did he put his hands on you and tell you he could heal you?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "So you know about this?" He said, "Oh my God, he's been talking about this ever since he could talk. He talks about this stuff all the time." I said, "Wow, so you're on board with all this?" He said, "Well, you have to be." He said, "Not only that," he said, his great-grandmother talks to him. And I said, "Really? How do you know?" And he said, "Well, we noticed that after he's finished eating, he puts his napkin out and he puts his elbows on his napkin. And he kept doing this, and this is something his great-grandmother did. And so we asked him, "Why are you doing that?" And he said, "Oh, it's for my heat bumps." And Brian told me that's what his grandmother used to call her arthritic elbows. That she would put the napkin out on the table so it would cushion or make not so cold the top of the table. And Christopher starts doing this. And Christopher tells them that she has shown him that that's what you do after you eat. Well, the thing about it is that Christopher never met his great-grandmother. She passed on long before he was ever born. So I have this wonderful connection with this little 3-year-old boy. And I so appreciate his truth, because he still remembers before he was born. And he remembers what he came in with. He came in with green magic in his hands. So that's why I ask you to revisit those early memories as I have, because you will discover who you really are. So with that, I'll invite you to join me again, and thanks for watching.